What do you teach that? Middle school, high school?
High school.
High school, very cool. Okay.
I'm going to start us live and do a little pre-show and then go ahead and start when you're ready, Brett.
Yeah. And it's going to be live today for people who are interested in listening live, obviously, the live coverage. But, of course, this will be on the Statecraft feed come mid next week, probably, maybe even like Sunday night or Monday morning.
Mhm.
So people, when they hear it there, we're going to have all the bumpers in there and all the ads in there, all that good stuff.
Yep.
So this is the raw take for people who care enough to come listen live.
Yep, absolutely.
So
Let me see if
let me bring up all my documents here. Are we live right now?
We are. We're just doing a little pre-show. No big deal. I'm getting all the tweets out.
Great. I'll retweet that stuff. Okay. Okay.
This goes on a page I manage. I apparently I manage all the pages. Statecraft. Actually, I'm going to put this on Blazing Caribou first.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And then
now, Drew and Reagan, I mentioned this to Carrie, and I'll mention it again at the top of the show. Very sketchy internet here, so if I do pop out for whatever reason, I will be hotspotting straight to the phone and hopefully getting right back in. So if I pop out, I'm going to let listeners know that's why. That's just kind of part of what we're doing here, because I'm very fortunate to even have a newsroom of any capacity to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working with what we have over the next day and a half.
I'm sure people understand.
Yeah.
It's like a pirate radio station from DC.
Exactly. And we I'm actually in this little, like, the building's under construction, and I asked them if there was a place I could do a quiet podcast, and I guess they have other people who do podcasts in here because they got the big SM7B microphone right here, like these babies, and really great. I'm traveling with an SM58, and these are awesome microphones, but I plugged it into my little interface that I brought to travel with, and I couldn't even hear myself because this thing is like a $400 microphone that requires like a massive preamp. So even though it's a dynamic mic, I couldn't hear anything. So I'm gonna use this.
You don't have a phantom power on your mixer?
I do. I have phantom power on the mixer turned on, and I can't hear the SM7B on it.
All right. Well, I got these cheap ones, so.
Do you have a Facebook that I can tag you in?
Me?
Yeah. At Drew Papsky. That's my name on there. I don't know if they're what the
HSKY, right?
PABH Sky. Yep.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. I wish that the SM7B just used Phantom, because Phantom, I mean, works great if you're just using a condenser mic or something like what you have right there. But I think with this thing, I think you genuinely need to have a separate preamp that really wires a lot, probably a thick signal into it, because I couldn't hear anything on it. But yeah. All right. What does this do?
Facebook is out.
There's a temperature control in here? Okay. The more you know. Oh, Jesus. Never mind. That's loud. Okay.
I think.
But do you know if there's a way to turn off me receiving video so I'm like not using up a crap ton of bandwidth
on your phone?
It's a good question. Are you on mobile? Are you on iPhone or Android?
I'm on my laptop.
Oh, you're on laptop. I don't think you can turn off receiving video. I think you can only turn off sending video.
Right.
I don't think you can either. I use this
Oh,
for
you
teaching.
can. I figured it out. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, there's a button next to the audio only button, the adjust bandwidth usage, and if you turn it all the way down, you can switch it to audio only.
God bless her.
Oh, the more you know. Very, very. That's really useful. I have never noticed that before.
That is really useful. Hello, Sean, if you're paying attention.
I've literally never clicked on that.
That's going to help my audio sound better because now my laptop's not struggling to do both.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, nice.
That's great.
Great. Good thinking.
Too. I learned something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's on the auto HD. What happens if I bring it down? I might bring mine down a little bit just so I have issues. No, I'll keep it wherever it is. I'll just hotspot it if I have issues. Surprisingly, I've actually been able. I am shocked that we were able to get 3 like 40-minute live broadcasts out today.
You're welcome.
From the yes, thank you. From the ground, because we thought for sure that phones are going to be a mess.
Yeah.
Because I know there was talks about turning off the networks entirely, and then I guess Verizon and T-Mobile, well, not Verizon, sorry, T-Mobile and AT&T, they wired in a whole bunch of towers, and I know some of my colleagues that are on Verizon, they couldn't get service today, but very luckily I was on T-Mobile, and they like literally rolled in towers on giant rolling things.
That's awesome. Yeah, they did a good job. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was really good. I also think part of it was that like I was purposely a little farther back, so I was not in like a giant mob. I was in a mob, but it wasn't as big of a mob as it was like midway down the mall.
Oh, sure.
So I think that helped a little bit. I don't know how cell tower signals work.
Very hard.
Yep. All right. Okay, great. Well, are we ready to get going or?
Whenever you'd like. We're all set.
Okay, right on. Now, just really quickly beforehand, how are we handling our rotating panel here?
As soon as I know that they're back, David Luzader is available, so we could probably put him. Do you want me to add one more? And then
I think 2 people at a time is probably great.
I'm just thinking, Phil may or may not be able to make it.
Okay.
So, Katie says that she can't because of their kids. So I don't know
Sure.
if you're just trying to put David in here, and then I could rotate David out.
Is it just us plus David then? Is that it?
It's us. Well, it's
Us 4 plus David?
yes, and possibly Phil, but he's
Okay, possibly Phil. Okay, why don't we, we can bring David in and maybe he goes on mute just for a little bit,
Mhm.
and then I'll introduce him in and we'll slowly just, keep it rotating.
Okay.
And get everyone's opinions and everyone's thoughts. Okay. Presidential advisor. I'm on their email list where they send you all sorts of crap. I thought it was hilarious that he like barely walked it. He like got out of the car for like literally I was watching him. He gets out of the car. He like walks like not even a quarter block and then immediately gets back in the car. And I don't, to be fair to him, I don't know if that's a safety thing. I don't know if maybe the Secret Service wasn't a fan of him walking it.
Whew.
Probably, man. It's one of the most threatened presidents in recent memory. So
That's very true. They got their work cut out for him.
Yeah. David, come in. It'll just take a second, and then you can tell him the whole spiel.
Cool. Yeah. I do have to laud TSA today though. They just did a phenomenal job. It was slow moving, but they really did a good job. They checked my stuff thoroughly, and I know I have creds around me, so I know that you can see I'm a journalist.
Mhm.
But I know that I am carrying stuff that most people are not carrying. Microphones and like metal boxes and all sorts of crap that could be suspicious. And they did a real good job with it. I have to hand it to them because that's a tough job.
If you got tagged in Facebook, if you could reshare that would
Yeah,
be
let me do it right now, and then we'll get started. Okay.
just waiting on David.
I retweeted on Twitter, but I can't remember my password. So
I know.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I could tell
Oh,
you
my
can't remember your password because whenever I tag you on something, you haven't. I think you did something like last July or something like that.
Mhm. I have to go on
book?
there and fix it for her because she doesn't remember. She'll want it one day. She's just like, I
no,
don't.
that's Facebook you're talking about. I'm talking about Twitter, Mom. I don't remember my password.
Oh my god.
You just hit recover.
Yeah.
did you just call her mom? Wait a minute. Am I missing something?
I am her mother. Yep.
Oh my goodness.
I know. That's Reagan Sims, and I'm Carrie Sims, and you have got both of us on here.
All right. No, actually, I gotta go. I don't do mother-daughter stuff anymore, so I'm out.
All right, let me share this for you, and then we'll kick it off. I'll share it on the OPE page too.
Okay. Anytime you tag me, it's cool. I'll reshare.
Cool. Okay, let me do the Twitter as well, and then we'll go ahead and get started. It looks like I can see a David in there.
Hi.
Hey, David, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm glad. BCS went well the other night, or GCS.
Yeah, we really missed you having you on there though, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited to listen to it and edit it, and I'm sure you guys did great. And yeah, I wish I could have been there, but as you know, you've had to miss a couple too, and it's great that we have 3 people because it's really easy. Really easy, if one of us can't be there. Okay. Okay. So basically, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna I guess we're going to handle it maybe 2 people at a time-ish. Right now, Carrie, I think I could just introduce everybody right now. I mean, 5 people on a panel is not that bad at all. Everybody has a distinctive voice, so I don't think we're going to have issues. Once Phil moves in, though, we'll start to rotate people out. Is there anybody that needs to go sooner? Is there anybody I should rotate out first?
As long as I'm out by 8, man, I can go for a while. I just got to do a comedy show tonight.
Cool. All right, right on.
Just me and the dog, so the earlier I can get out of here so she doesn't go stir crazy, probably the better for me.
Right.
Okay, cool.
I've
Then
been doing this all day, so whenever you want me out.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Great. Well, we'll just keep it moving organically then. We don't want to keep this long because as I was telling these guys, I'm a little dead inside. I've been up since like 4 a.m. and I walked 20 miles, so I'm out of it. But it's gonna be a lot of fun. So, all right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And when this hits the feed next week, we're gonna make sure that the ads are all rolling and all that good stuff. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce all you. Hello, everybody. My name is Brett Stewart, and welcome to a panel discussion here on Statecraft. This is the first panel discussion we're putting together. Now, this podcast is a new podcast here on Blazing Caribou. It's an exploration of the chaotic world of U.S. politics with me as your tour guide, and this podcast will explore elections, legislation, governing, and much more, all through the lens of investigative journalism, with satire, discourse, and much more. Today, we are handling that discourse. We have assembled a really wonderful panel, and I do want to mention that a couple things before I introduce the panel. As many of you might know, I am live in Washington, D.C. right now covering the inauguration, and because of that, I am in a Medill, which is a sect of Northwestern University. They have very graciously hosted myself and my colleagues that came up from Chicago, and we're very fortunate because typically you don't have a newsroom when you're working, especially as an independent journalist of some capacity. So we typically wouldn't have a newsroom, but they are hosting us here, which is wonderful. Their building is under construction. So if I pop out at any point, my wonderful co-host here will take the reins and I'll hop back in on a mobile hotspot. I just want to let listeners know that that's part of being here live. And I've been here live now for almost 2 days, and I'll be here again tomorrow for the Women's March. And I want to introduce now all the wonderful people that are joining me. First of all, I have
And that's the first break that we already have. He's going to have to start that part over. I'll just let him take a minute to come on back. Is everybody else all good? Yeah, it looks like everybody's still okay. We just lost Brett for just a second. Of course. Right when he starts. Isn't that great? He's been great all day, though. This is actually the first little hiccup that we've had. We've had a couple little tiny hiccups, but this one is...
I'm sure he's not the only one broadcasting out at this moment. So
right. Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of people going. It's about that time, so he's just kind of stuck there, isn't he?
It was as soon as he said it was going to happen. He's like, yeah, I might drop something, so make sure
So
you...
give him a moment to come back in.
there he is.
Come back.
Hi. What was the last thing you guys heard me say?
Here's where you're going to start this to make it easy for yourself. Just you were about to introduce somebody. So go ahead and just start it from there. Like,
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So you were just about to.
If I cut again, I'm going to go to the hotspot.
Okay.
So in any case, introducing Carrie Sims is joining us. Carrie Sims has been producing with me throughout the day. We've been doing 3 different live broadcasts throughout the day here at Washington, D.C. I was down at the Washington Monument. I was down at the White House. I was down on the Mall. And I really appreciate Carrie helping me with that today. And, of course, Carrie, you can find her everywhere in Blazing Caribou. She does Brokebot Mountain, a Westworld podcast. She does Trivia Geeks. She does the up-and-coming sketching comedy with our wonderful Phil Rude. All those wonderful shows are happening from Carrie. And, of course, she's been helping me as a co-host and producer of the day. Thanks so much for joining me, Carrie.
Oh, no problem. It's been my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun, too. So we'll see how things are moving forward. You might need me again. You never know.
Yep, I'm sure I will. And it's great that we can do this on the network because I don't think there's a lot of podcast networks that have been able to do, like a live coverage type thing like we've been doing.
Yeah,
and
no,
similar.
fly, and it's been a lot of fun because it's
Yeah.
different kind of information coming out, which I really like. You know, it's not the typical news, but it is news, and it's what's happening right now. And I really appreciate you being there, Brett, and kind of taking the reins for us here at Blazing Caribou. So thank you, and kudos and hats off to you walking your 10 miles today.
Yeah, it's been a long day. I get up at 3 in the morning, and we've been wandering around the Capitol ever since. But I do want to introduce everyone else that's joining us. And also, I should mention that Statecraft is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, do a political podcast here on Blazing Caribou. And I was in D.C., I was covering stuff. I decided to do mostly audio. I was strapped, with mics all over me today. So I thought, why the hell not? We'll start the show now. So I also want to introduce, we have Reagan Sims with us as well. That, of course, is the wonderful daughter of Carrie Sims. Reagan is now a semi-frequent guest on Blazing Caribou shows. She's also a very talented young woman in her own right and a very good student as well. How are you doing, Reagan?
I'm good. You guys can't get rid of me. I just like being on shows now.
Yeah, we love having you on shows. We have you on a cell phone connection right now, so hopefully we won't have any issues with getting your audio through. You're very passionate about politics, so it's very exciting to have a younger voice, even younger than me, here on the show to talk about politics with us. I also want to introduce David Luzader. David Luzader, of course, is my wonderful co-host on Geek Cinema Society. David can also be found on Brokeback Mountain Westworld podcast, and he can also be found over at Sketching Comedy, which is Heck Yeah Comics. It's been a long day, guys. Heck Yeah Comics off of our network, and that's a great show. I highly recommend checking out. David, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. Very happy to be here. Happy to support you, Brett, in your new expedition, I guess we could call it.
Yeah, it has been an expedition. It's been a 12-hour drive to get here, which was a nightmare for someone who gets car sick like me. Yeah, it was frequent stops of queasiness. But something I am very not queasy to introduce is another wonderful person that's on our network. He's brand new. It's Drew Papsky. He has written for a number of sports shows and websites throughout his career. He's been a podcaster. He's a stand-up comedian. He's a U.S. history teacher in high schools, and he's also working on the upcoming Sports Rack show here at Blazing Caribou. Drew, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Brett? Maybe not U.S. history teacher after I break the rule of discussing politics in public, but we'll see. So,
yeah,
we'll delete that one after this.
Well, I certainly appreciate you being here. It's wonderful to have an academic mind that is, teaching the youth of America all about U.S. politics. I know, I'm a senior in college right now. So, 4, 5, 6 years ago when I was in the position of your students, certainly some of the most impactful people in my life were people in your shoes. You were teaching me U.S. history and getting me turned on to this stuff and getting me excited about it.
Yeah. How old are you, son? You said you're pretty young. We got young people in here.
Yeah. I am 21. So,
oh man, I'm 27. I'm not that much older than you. I'm still
okay,
like
you're not
15
that...
at heart, so we'll do it. We'll do all right.
All right, perfect. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to discuss some of the brand new things President Trump has done since taking office, and then we're just going to get into a broad roundtable. If anyone has any questions about what's happening at the inauguration, if there's anything anyone wants to talk about, this is very organic, very loose. We're going to talk for about another 45 minutes to an hour tops, and again, this will be on the feed for people later on. First of all, a couple things I want to drop. Trump has signed his first bill into law. President Donald Trump signed his first bill into law Friday, moments after being sworn in, clearing the way for his defense secretary to be confirmed. The 45th president signed a bill by Congress earlier this month that would allow retired General James Mattis to serve as defense secretary by waiving the legal requirement that he'll be out of the military for 7 years before doing so, according to the White House press secretary. He still needs to be confirmed by the Senate, which is expected Friday afternoon. But in any case, it looks like Trump has already picked up the silver pen and started doing stuff. And another brief thing I want to mention, and I'm going to send this over to Carrie, is Trump has already started cutting stuff. The freshly inaugurated Trump administration has halted a cut to the FHA mortgage insurance premium that Obama's team announced during his final days in office. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, which of course is run by Ben Carson now, said Friday that the reduction to the annual mortgage insurance premiums borrowers pay when taking out the government-backed home loans has been suspended indefinitely. The cut at 1/4 percentage point would have saved homeowners an average of $500 this year, according to the Federal Housing Administration. Borrowers with larger home loans would have seen an even bigger drop in their premium rate. Carrie, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Well, this is kind of a big deal. I was wondering what shoe would drop. I do want to mention real quick before we get too involved that we are live on Alpha Geeks Channel 5. So if you are an Alpha Geek listener, to go ahead and check us out over there. But having said that, FHA is a big deal. It really helps out first-time buyers. It helps out low-income housing. You say a 0.5 percentage or something like that over the course of a loan, whether it's 10, 15, 30 years, that 0.5 percentage could mean thousands and thousands of dollars saved in interest. So this is kind of a big deal. It's the first hit to lower middle class and low middle class, I feel a rise of this coming on. It's it's a little hit, but it's enough to make a dent, I guess you could say, on the very first day. It's kind of bold and kind of brazen for Trump to go ahead and just start that. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the future.
So you said that this is something that benefits, first-time buyers of homes.
Yeah.
That surprises me that Trump would go after that, because that is, typically his mantra, and something that he very much echoed during his inauguration speech today is, I am here for the common man, right? You are finally being heard.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make it a little bit harder for you to buy a home.
Right. Well, basically what this does is, there's a bunch of these FHA-backed mortgages, and percentage rates are, when you lower them, banks don't make money. So I am not surprised by this one bit. I actually wrote an article about this way back about 6 months ago, saying that this would probably happen. This is the first thing that's going to happen, because Trump's interest is not in housing, or is in housing, because he's so far into real estate, but his hands are in the back pockets of the banks, and banks are what loan you money. And I pretty much figured that this would start happening kind of right off the bat. There's a couple other things that could occur that I'm concerned about, is the Dodd-Frank Act as well. That is pretty much an act that happened after the 2008 crash that Obama put into place, that basically made people responsible, the banks, and accountable for their actions. And what it established was the banking system, so that way people would have to be accountable and have to go and take classes in mortgages. They'd have to be licensed in states. They would have to be regulated by the state and by the federal government as well. And without that, basically you set up the too big to fail kind of a scenario with the banking system. So I'm kind of watching. I'm the first to probably say, let's watch the Dodd-Frank Act, because if that drops, we kind of go backwards into, 2007 scenario, like we're about to hit a crash.
Thanks for that, Carrie. You can hear me, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Great, wonderful. I cut out there. I'm now on mobile hotspot. The beauties of going live. At least I'm not in the backseat of a car, which is where most independent journalists are right now. Yeah, this is definitely something to keep an eye on. And thanks for enlightening us a little bit on this. Frankly, I could not speak to this. I have no idea what's going on with this. So I very much appreciate that. I'm basically going to go down the line here, and then we have some discussion topics as well. I want to turn it over to David. I'm just going to go down it as I see it on Google Hangouts here. And David, did you watch any of the coverage today, either from us or, ideally from someone who's better than us who could show you more? Something, either the speech or anything like that?
I had very minimal, probably, acknowledgement of this event today. Obviously, I knew it was happening.
Sure.
I heard, radio reports, saw some TV coverage, but I did not really make it a focus of my day. I actually tried very hard to get outside today and spend time with my dog, and just not let my mind focus on negative things for too long.
It sounds like you had a very productive day, in contrast to certainly some people who were almost in mourning on the mall when I was down there the day. And there was an interesting dichotomy between incredibly jazzed Trump protests, Trump supporters, and really rampantly depressed Trump, detractors. So as someone who attempted to stay away from this a little bit. What are you looking forward to, or even what you're hesitant about moving forward into the next couple years of a Trump presidency?
Ooh, so I am an eternal optimist. Obviously, the groundwork has not been laid for an optimist, I would say. But I still, I have to have hope that that good things can still happen going forward. And really, I don't know what to expect out of a Trump presidency. Maybe that's where a lot of apprehension comes for a lot of people. It's just that he and on the election trail, he played the whole wild card thing. You didn't know what he was going to say, what he was going to do. So there's been contradictions left and right, and we don't know what Donald Trump is going to appear in the office, which one's going to be signing the bills, which one's going to be giving speeches. Really, like most people, I'm probably just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, but I have to hope that that things are, history, I do believe, is a rising road, and that we're going to continue rising going forward, and just not let the whole uncertainty of it shake me too much.
And you bring up a really good point, David, which is, what Trump are you going to get? And that's something that Carrie and I talked about earlier today, because when I talked to a bunch of Trump protesters here, and I made a point to do that because I didn't just want to sit there and talk to protesters, because quite frankly, supporters outnumber them here. They are the majority, at least here in DC right now. And when I talked to them, the like recurring sentiment is, do as I do, not as I say, essentially. Just don't listen to what Trump says, which is weird coming from someone who supports him. But don't really listen to what he says. Just see what he does. His actions are going to speak louder than his words. And even though he speaks very loudly, and they are not very concerned about how he flip-flops on things, about how he's somewhat erratic in terms of what he says and who he says it to and when he says it and where he says it. All they really care about is what they think he's going to do. And You're right. You don't really know which Trump you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard stories of people who have had one-on-one meetings with Donald Trump who were not supporters of him, and then they meet. They have these one-on-one meetings, and they come out of them not even necessarily being on his side, but being not as concerned. He's obviously a very charismatic individual on a one-on-one setting, but he apparently has a hard time getting that out to the masses. And that even, again, speaks to, he says one thing in public, but then you have some of his detractors meeting him in private and, coming away, shaking hands with him and smiling, and as if there's some level of alliance that has been reached. So it's so uncertain at this time.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you listen to, for example, This American Life did a piece last July. It was over the summer in July, where they had this guy who was in Texas, some entrepreneur, and him and his father, these big, I think not real estate moguls, but some sort of big industry. And every presidency, they funnel money into both candidates, because for them it's purely business. For them, it's determining where can they lay the seeds for the most influence. And they followed this guy for a long time as he was figuring out, which Republicans he wanted to, get in bed with. And he really didn't want to do it with Trump, really didn't want to do it, was avoiding Trump at every possible angle, was supporting and actively giving money to people who were not Trump. And then finally, when it started to dwindle down, this guy and his dad, they go and they sit down with Trump. He leaves the meeting and he says, you know what? We didn't really talk a whole lot, but I just love the guy. So he definitely seems to have that behind closed doors charisma that is fascinating.
Yeah, I wonder why it's hard for him to translate that to the crowds, at his rallies and during his speeches.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because I almost wonder if some sincerity is lost in his speeches that maybe he has with people in private, which is why they're more inclined to like him after they've met with him in private. Mm-hmm. I read an interesting Politico piece today where some people close to Trump say he's very he does have inner turmoil right now. From what they understand of him, he is worried about being a screw up. He does not want to be the president that's gone awry. So maybe part of that is just a public image thing for Trump because he is kind of thin-skinned. He does care very much about his image. Reagan, no chat, a little late for that. And maybe for him, it's partially he wants to be the best president that he thinks he can be, and it's hard for him to convey that to a lot of people at once. But maybe he's a little better when he sits down with people.
Absolutely, and that's hard to tell from someone who's only ever heard him, in quotes on the radio or in speeches that have been broadcast on TV.
Right. And then one more question I want to ask you is, have you seen anything around your locale? I know you live mostly in a college town, so I would assume slightly more liberal people are probably in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny watching the results on election night, and Virginia in a total was mostly a red state, but then you would see these pockets of blue, and where I live is one of those pockets of blue, but people in Virginia are very spread out. And so we were one of the population densities, which is why Virginia eventually ended up going for Hillary Clinton. And just kind of in my drives around, because I live near the campus, I have seen demonstrations. I don't know if I would call them necessarily protests, but people who are voicing their dislike of how things turned out and for President Trump. And it definitely has been, it's difficult to say that it's been a prevailing feeling, but there definitely are signs of it around.
Very interesting. Yeah, that it's always fascinating to see how college towns in particular react, because they're almost all too eager to drop everything and make signs. That's something I have seen a whole lot over the course of the last year. So it's always interesting to see what they have to say, especially as millennial voters tend to be more critical of newly elected President Trump. I'm going to move down our row here, and I'm going to talk to you, Drew. Drew, you are a U.S. history professor. At a high school, I guess the first
teacher, not a professor.
Teacher.
Don't think I'm an idiot. They're like, oh, that's a horrible professor when he talks.
I see. I'm used to calling everyone around me professors. But in any case, the first thing I want to ask you is as someone who teaches this in a classroom, who teaches the history of this, how do you juggle, especially now with the inauguration and the election the last couple of weeks and months, how do you juggle that in a classroom with students? I mean, do you want to get political? Do you have to walk a certain line? Do you have discussions with the students? All that sort of stuff. I'm really curious.
Well, it's for me, I always thought it should be part of the classroom in history, because if you make it relevant to them, they might want to learn. The problem is a lot of 14 to 17-year-old kids don't always want to talk about politics. You have a few, and usually they're pretty gung-ho. But it's also worth mentioning, I teach a mostly black school. So it's very mostly the political opinions are very they're not very diverse. They're usually all one-sided. That being said, I do have a very vocal Trump supporter in my class this year, who was actually one of the more well-read kids in my class because he was so into it. And there was one Hillary supporter. So watching that dynamic this year was kind of funny. I let him go at it for a little bit. I have to kind of break it up, kids. Get back in your corners, not till the bell rings and go back, But it is interesting to see it because I always thought I'd never be able to separate myself from it, because as someone who teaches history, obviously I am semi-passionate about politics when the Flyers aren't playing. But I don't know, man. It's a lot easier to separate it when you're dealing with little kids. You can kind of look at them and say, you know what, if I start giving them my opinion about what's going on right now, then I'm not really helping them. So I just, no matter what, even if it hurts me to say it, I will give the devil's advocate that's totally against what I believe and just make them think about that. So that's kind of what I try to do whenever. I know it makes me sound really, really nice or whatever, but it's really what I do. I'm not blowing smoke. I try to do that at least. That's
cool though, because I think the best thing a teacher can do for you is be that devil's advocate, and not just be an echo chamber, and not and cause students to think, cause students to react critically to different arguments and different viewpoints. And that's something, if you have someone who's supporting Hillary in your class and someone who's supporting Trump in your class, that dichotomy, I'm sure, is quite stark. One thing I would ask is, at a mostly, so you said you're mostly black students throughout the school.
Yeah, most part black or black Hispanic, minority being white and Asian.
Okay, so
Indian.
Is that a school then that reacted more negatively toward Trump? Was there an atmosphere at all in your school of students, maybe perhaps the day after the election or anything like that? Because that tends
Students,
to be
teachers, education is mostly a liberal profession. So
true.
teachers, students acting like a kid tell me he's gonna get deported. I'm like just the media blew it up to make him feel like he was going to get thrown out of here, and he was, his parents were born here. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, 'cause I'm black, and then just like silly stuff like that. I'm like, shut the hell up, dude. Get out your workbook. Like, come on. I talked to him about it because like really like just the amount of like fear mongering that was like being created around it, because like they're little kids, they just hear stuff their parents say or read tweets, which is fine. I did it too. I mean, we all did it. I had people telling me like Obama was going to bring us back to like socialist Russia or whatever. I mean, you hear all this stuff every time someone gets elected. So as history teacher, I kind of like to put things in perspective, because I try to like calm them down. Like, yo, remember that time we learned about this? Yeah, they all thought that was going to happen, and what happened? Yeah, we won the war. Good one. Okay, back to it.
When you're talking about putting things in perspective as a history teacher, how far back do you teach for your class?
We go from the Revolutionary War in US 1 till World War 1. Then we do like the Roaring 20s up until I usually end around 9/11. Real nice, happy ending to US 2.
Yeah,
and
real
then,
great.
Yeah.
Great, ending really, really powerfully there. But so you cover then, the span of the entirety of American history, essentially. Does it help your students at all to put in perspective what's happening in a contemporary landscape with what they're learning in your classroom, do you think?
Yeah, especially with the election, it was so easy to talk about when we did the New Deal and all these policies, like we mentioned earlier, the FHA, which was created during the Great Depression era to do things like help relieve lenders. I'm sorry, people that were getting houses lent to them to help to make sure the housing market doesn't crash, which it did, and we bailed out in 2013, and now we'll see what happens with that. But also the immigration stuff. There's been immigration quotas have been like, for better or for worse, a trademark of American immigration. They're always like, this part of the world, not so much. This part of the world, okay. And whether or not it was because of race or just international relations, it's always kind of been there. And just economic stuff too. We look at like the first political parties and how they're basically shells of what they are today. But the Federalists and Democratic Republicans still have some ideas about, do we give new immigrants, instant citizenship so they vote for us? There's your Jeffersonians right there. And then John Adams wants to ban them from coming in. Does it sound familiar? Like I kind of bring that stuff up in class.
That's really cool. And you're absolutely right in regard, especially to our national history of immigration, because it's funny because you think about the groups of Americans that are quintessentially American, right? You think of like the Irish and the Italians, especially in places like New York. But they weren't.
They're quintessential, but they were like the lowest of low. They were right above a black person, according to the reading I have by Jacob Reese, which is how the other half lives. They were the dirt, right? They were the poor.
Exactly.
Whites.
But now we look at that as like the quintessential American, right?
Yeah.
Like blue, bleeds red, red, white, and blue. But they started off as cast out immigrants who were very much societal and economic rejects of their surroundings. So much so that you look at places like New York, and that's why it developed in very specific pockets, because people live with people they know, and people live with people who have the same culture as them. So that's absolutely fascinating. One more question I want to ask you, as a comedian as well, you do stand-up comedy. You got good material coming your way, at least, right?
Yeah, it's always like the kind of thing like, at least we always have funny jokes when there's like a present no one likes. I tried to avoid that when like this past year with my jokes, because especially living near Philly, it's everyone was just making jokes about Trump, his hair, all this, and for me, I'm like, all right, guys, we get it. Like I heard this on SNL 5 times this week. You got to kind of like find the angle that hasn't been really used before. I try to avoid talking about it on stage because also it's polarizing. People, no matter what, they think you're funny or not, they might not think you're as funny if they hear your opinion on things. So I try to kind of keep it, a little bit like more close to the chest.
Yeah, that's true. And you're right. A lot of people, David says in our chat, this year must be great for comics. No one can do Trump as good as Trump. That's very true, David. And also
that's untrue.
Yeah. It's always a double-edged sword when you talk in the comics or musicians. I've had many people come up to me and say, you can write protest songs now. And I'm like, yeah, I can write protest songs now. I guess that is now an avenue that is open to me as a creative in the Trump presidency. But thanks so much. I'm going to move right down our panel. In addition, we have Reagan Sims with us. Reagan, you are a younger woman, of course, who is really starting to turn on to politics now. What are your thoughts about what happened today? What are your thoughts as a millennial who has been very outspoken for especially like social equality and all that sort of stuff?
Well, I'm a little bit in shock. I knew that it was coming, but just with the inauguration, it feels like a death, right? I mean, I've had President Obama for literally half of my life. I'm 16. He was president for 8 years. Obama is what I know and what I remember, and he's safe. And now we're going into an entirely different era. We're going from this liberal sweeping democratism to just populism. And it's kind of a shock to me because I really thought during the election that we wouldn't be seeing this. And now that we are, I'm just kind of fearing the worst. I'm really wishing that I could be more optimistic about what's going to happen in the future, especially with foreign and domestic policy. But Trump's inaugural address alone really showed that he's serious about his radical foreign policy, especially with him talking about how we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, which I entirely disagree with. I'm a little bit skeptic, and I'm kind of scared for what this is going to do for my future. I'm going to college in 2 years. After that, I'm going to have to deal with the job market after we've had President Trump. What is this going to do for me after his presidency? Because although he's saying that he's for the middle class and for the working man, so far all that we've been shown is that he's your typical normal Republican. And on top of being your typical normal Republican, we have a Republican Congress. And I'm honestly a little bit terrified of what my job prospects are going to be by the time I graduate college.
What kind of stuff do you see a Republican Congress and a Republican president doing that would affect your job prospects?
I really can see the fact that they're going to decrease regulation to the point where there's not going to be much sense for hiring someone like me, because I am disabled, and they can easily get rid of things that make it, hard for employers to just not hire disabled people. They can do a lot of things in terms of deregulating industries that'll decrease my job prospects, as well as, protections for workers. Republicans aren't exactly this great, like, labor union friendly group, and I very much am. So if they're going to be fighting unions, that's really going to affect the middle class.
Which is ironic because they voted for him this year, at least up through the Rust Belt. I've talked about this a couple times today, I think in our first broadcast, but there was a traditionally a much more blue vote, the blue collar vote, what I call the Springsteen vote. They listen to Bruce Springsteen, and every Bruce Springsteen song is written about them. In places like like New Jersey, in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, places like Michigan and Pennsylvania, Hillary Clinton never should have lost. And they were hers to lose, and she lost them. And that's because Trump came down to these, blue collar voters, and said, hey, you like coal? We're going to hold on to that. You want your factory job? We're not going to send that to China. We're going to make sure you have your factory job. The way you guys have been living your lives, and the way your parents and their parents have been living their lives, we're not going to uproot that. So my question to you, as someone who is outspoken for unions and outspoken for that demographic, is how do you balance the innovation of technologies? How do we push forward, for example, like a factory worker, to be more successful in a growing, technological world where maybe their job, necessarily becoming obsolete, but maybe the society in which they're in has reached a point where they could be the next level up and the machine could do what they were doing. Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I have a bit of a pipe dream in terms of what I really, really wanted to happen. And what I wanted to happen was for college education to be subsidized by the federal government much, much further than what it is now. So the fact that all Americans could get a significantly debt-reduced education, a higher education. And in which case, because the population would be more educated, and that includes those factory workers who are right now basically stuck in a job that doesn't have a whole lot of mobility and positions to move up. With more education, that would leave us open to more creative jobs, more jobs that would allow the worker to do more than just work in a factory, 9 hours a day.
Right.
And I really think that while factories are important, I think there is something to be said about them moving to China, because it's going to happen. That's the thing. Regardless of this presidency, 8 years from now, assuming we have a 2-term Donald Trump presidency, 8 years from now, there's nothing that's going to prevent these factories from moving. It will always be cheaper, at least of right now, for them to just move to China. And instead of telling workers, no, you can keep your jobs, we need to be preparing these workers to lose their jobs and put a contingency plan in place. It's really foolish, I feel, to assume that these factories are going to stay open, especially when all the evidence points to the other side.
You make an excellent point that myself and Carrie talked about earlier today, actually, which is the best way to create that upward mobility is actually to have education, because then the people who were previously the factory workers are now managing the factories. Maybe they're engineers of some degree that are helping perpetuate the technology within that factory, and then that factory work can either be autonomized or it can move elsewhere where it's more inexpensive. Because the idea, I think, of a growing American job market and technological advancement is that eventually Americans outgrow a certain type of job, right? And eventually that goes somewhere else to a job market that's not as sophisticated, that's growing at a slower rate or farther behind than Americans. And that can be a gradual rise. And ideally the workforce within that rise can increase wages and create, new jobs in new fields, while still, ideally keeping focused on what they were originally all about. And I think that would be really fascinating. I do want to open up, this I think is a great topic to open up just to the panel in general. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? Go right ahead, anybody. Anybody can
on factory work specifically? Or?
That's Phil Rude, by the way, and I was going to introduce him after my conversation with Reagan. But hi, Phil.
Hi, Brett. How are you?
I'm doing so well.
Yeah,
I'm very exhausted. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you now, since I got you. Phil Rude, of course, an artist on our network. He, of course, does Brokeback Mountain, the Westworld podcast. You can find Phil on Sketching Comedy with Carrie. And you can find Phil's art online. Phil's such a talented artist. And actually, the guy who came to my rescue to create awesome art for this particular show on ridiculously short notice. So thanks for hopping in here and joining with us.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And
so the question,
kicking me off with a question that a lot of us, I don't know, a lot of people in my world are thinking about the future of blue collar jobs. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like Reagan's talking about, nobody really knows where it's going, because I don't think going overseas is the issue as much as automation. My dad has worked in a machine shop for 35 years. I'm sorry, just over 30 years. And, he's seen a lot of manufacturing go overseas. And now we're talking about bringing it back, and Trump's big platform is we're bringing manufacturing back. And that may be good for a few years if it does happen. But automation is coming, and that is, that's going to be ultimately even cheaper than manufacturing going to China.
Sure.
Reagan bringing up a point about education being a big key, and I'm not discounting that, but not everybody is going to be a manager. Not everybody is going to be an engineer. Not everybody
True.
is a fit for the education system, where, you know, a lot of America is built on vocation and trade, the trades, not trade, you know, like plumbing, electrical, contracting.
Absolutely.
Well, if we build a wall, we'll have contractors.
Well, we'll have plenty of work there, won't we? We won't have anything to pay for it. But I do think, and I'm not suggesting that I have an answer. I certainly don't. But I think the big problem is that nobody does. Nobody's really thinking past next week. Nobody's looking down the road. I believe that, you know, factory owners and manufacturing companies are looking down the road because this is ultimately going to be very good for them. But nobody's really looking down the road at how the average blue collar American worker is going to support themselves.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Reagan.
In response to your comment saying that education isn't the only solution, I absolutely agree. And that's why we need a strong government to set up a system now. Because if thousands, if not millions of blue collar workers are going to lose their jobs, we need a decent welfare system until these people can find something to do to make money. And while that doesn't necessarily sound great to the rest of us, what is the purpose of a nation if not to support the weak?
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I have been at points in my life where I have been on government assistance. I know people who have been on government assistance. I don't think there's any shame in it. I don't think a welfare state where that's just the norm because we cannot provide enough industry for our workers is really the best thing. But I'm not about to go demonizing people who are out of work either. I think we have a real problem with the way we view welfare and assistance programs in this country, to where people want to attack poor people instead of attacking poverty, if that makes any sense. Whereas I feel like the poor who require assistance are really being demonized, but the system that's putting them out on their ass isn't. Am I making any sense at all? I feel like I'm talking in a big circle.
No, you're both making perfect sense. I'm going to go ahead and see David Luzader off here. He's got to head out. You can hear David, of course, on the podcast I mentioned, Geek Cinema Society, Broke Bob Mountain, Heck Yeah Comics. Is there anything else you want to mention, David?
No, but I will say that all of these people have wonderful insights, and it's a great little crew that you have accrued here. So thank you so much for having me, and I hope that I didn't embarrass myself too much.
No, it was a pleasure having your insight. Seriously, David, I always loved having you on the show, and I'm very excited to be back with you guys next week on Geek Cinema. So take care.
You as well. Thank you very much. Continue the conversation.
Later, David.
Okay. So what I would say with both of you is first of all, you guys are having a great discussion here, and I think the problem is that you both make excellent points, right? Because Reagan makes a great point that you need education at some point, to some degree, right? But then Phil makes a great point that not everyone's totally fit for the education system. Some people are vocational, some people want to be blue collar, some people work through life in different ways, and not everybody wants to go to college. Not everybody wants to work through that path, and that's perfectly fine. And as Phil says, that's a lot of what America has been built on. And then that problem becomes, as Reagan said, then where do those jobs go? Right? There has to be some sort of welfare. There has to be something in case they can't get any job. But then, to Phil's credit, we don't know what those jobs can be yet. That's the problem, is what are those jobs? And I think you both make excellent points, and I think it has to be a mixture of all these things, right? There has to be a sustainable welfare system for people who are out of work, but there also has to be a system that doesn't create a welfare state, that doesn't create people relying so heavily on it that a job force is not perpetuated to go out and find work. And this is all stuff that is coming in the near future for factory workers, for people who are in the professions, and I don't know if anyone has an answer, Trump included.
No, I don't think anyone has an answer either. And I think part of the problem is everybody is looking for a one-size-fits-all answer. If you look at something like Obamacare, people are very angry with it because it's not perfect. And they're sort of missing the point that it is a step in the right direction. I kind of feel like there's baby steps, but we need to be moving forward on figuring these solutions instead of looking for this one magic bullet that's going to fix all of these problems in one fell swoop.
Absolutely. I want to give it to Carrie with our show notes, because Politico, breaking news, White House orders immediate regulatory freeze. You beat Politico to it. They didn't get the email out till 3 minutes ago.
Ha.
So, but yeah, this is
Blazing Caribou. Wow.
oh yeah, we broke it before Politico did to all these live listeners. But fun fact, Carrie just put this in our chat. U.S. Department of Agriculture data from 2013, which administers welfare, 40.2% of SNAP recipients, SNAP is food stamps, are white, 25.7% are black, 10.3% are Hispanic, 2.1% are Asian, and 1.2% are Native American. And right off the bat, that dispels the theory that that minorities are the primary recipients
That's right.
of food stamps, because it's mostly white people.
Of course, they're the bigger population in the world. The middle that's been like eaten up with these manufacturing jobs. They have to get on it. They don't have an option for a job. They're a bigger population of the country. So absolutely, that would make a lot of sense. I've seen those numbers before and talked to my students about that. Just look at the population numbers; it just makes sense.
Oh yeah, and I think also you look at, and I'm sure you've taught this in your class. There's poor Black America and there's poor white America. You go down in the Appalachia, especially like in the during the Dust Bowl era,
Yeah.
and there was most certainly there's a poor sect of white America that I think a lot of people forget exists.
Which is what I think they think their voice wasn't being heard. But to go back to that for a second, I think just if I can make a comment, I think a lot of times, whether the media or just society, they kind of make those two sides seem like they're at odds when really they have a lot more in common than they think. Where you look at like the poor things like being on welfare or not having great education or not having a stable family home and crime. Those all are similar problems. And as far as the education thing, talking about that, I'm not saying the education for college needs to be being expanded is a bad thing, but as a teacher, we should really, I agree with Reagan on that. But what about high school, middle school, and elementary school, man? Like, do you look at the functionally illiterate people that come out of certain areas? Like, I'm guessing Reagan goes to a pretty good school, or she's pretty intelligent. Carrie seems like pretty intelligent herself too. I talked to her a few times though, so Carrie, I won't say it on the river yet, but seriously though, like they like these kids come in and like they're reading on like a 4th grade level, and how are we expecting them to go to college if like our high schools aren't even the high schools get the kids? I don't know, do with some of these 8th graders coming in, they can't freaking read. And a career in technical education is on the rise for that very reason, because you need to be able, like, even it's not just going to a mechanic shop and fixing spark plugs. Like, career in technical education is creating new jobs as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, like, goodness, I mean, we didn't even touch on that, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because there is such a systemic problem with public education, especially through a lot of urban areas, especially through systems where kids fall through the cracks and don't get taught what they need to get taught. I am blown away by the amount of writers, because I've worked for years now as an editor-in-chief of publications. I worked for a publication called Strike Magazine during my high school years, and then I've worked for a political essay. I've worked for a couple of different publications, and the constant is that I'll get relatively good creative people who have great ideas, and we'll sit down and write, and their grammar's atrocious. And I know it's more than grammar. I know it's more than that, but just the fact even that falls through the cracks of K-12 system, and there's so much that can be improved in that spectrum before we even start talking about higher education.
Yeah, so I don't know what the solution is. No Child Left Behind to me is like Obamacare. It had a lot of good ideas and a good like heart in the right place, but as forgive me my political opinions on a political show. When you give the government a job to do, they don't always do it the way you want them to, and that seems to be the case.
That's very true. You're right. No Child Left Behind had great intent, and we ended up getting a lot of standardized tests, which I'm sure you are very familiar with as a high school teacher. And as someone who has, recently finished high school in the last, half decade, I learned nothing from taking endless standardized tests. They didn't really improve my education. They stressed me the hell out. They never helped me get into colleges the way that people told me they would. I ended up getting into colleges through essays and through recommendations and through portfolios. It wasn't strictly through my test scores. And perhaps that's because I didn't go to like an Ivy League school or something, but I digress. That stuff I think could be amended in our political it's been a long day for me in our school system, where it's more beneficial for students, because that was something I got nothing out of. But I understand the premise. I understand that schools need funding, that kids need to be getting through hoops, but there's ways we could improve it. Phil, you have 2 cents.
I always have 2 cents, Brett. Talking about standardized testing and things like that. With standardized testing, aside from the backwards idea that low performing schools get less money when they really need more of it. But my big problem with that is there's a lot of teaching to the test and not teaching kids how to think, not teaching kids how to critically think for themselves and analyze information that they're getting and come to their own conclusions. Reagan sounds like she is rising above that and forming her own opinions. Drew, it sounds like you are taking your class and sort of that devil's advocate thing. It hurts to play sometimes, but that's the kind of thing that is sparking critical thought, and it's probably taking your students a lot further than a lot of their other classes are. It's challenging them a lot more than a lot of them are, and I would just like to see more of that across the board.
Yeah, how hard it is to play devil's advocate. We get to say maybe America was wrong. I read about a patriot like me saying, yeah, maybe America was wrong about this one.
We play devil's advocate all the time. Well, you did that, but did you ever think about the other side of this? All the time is what we're playing devil's advocate. I think that's a prerequisite to be a mom.
It's a prerequisite to having some empathy, is being able to look at every side of everything. And
absolutely.
I think there's a good discussion going on here. There's a good discussion in the chat off to the side. Reagan had an apology up here earlier. Phil, I'm sorry if I sound angry. And it's like, no, this isn't angry. I've been in Facebook, man. Like Facebook is an angry place.
Oh, no, we're all incredibly respectful here, and I love all these opinions.
I think this kind of discourse is really what has polarized a lot of this stuff. It's we have Trump and Hillary, which very, very polar opposites. The pendulum swinging wider and wider, and the opinions are going further and further out until they're getting off the map, because nobody can sit down and have a rational conversation. So when I see stuff like this, and I see young kids like Reagan, and I see educators like Drew, and young people like, I don't know how I left you off the young people list, Brett, like out there doing things and putting these kind of conversations together, it's good to see. It's good to see it, and it's good to be a part of it. And I honestly think that nothing's going to get solved if more people don't learn how to do it and actually have a rational conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can't sit down and talk to somebody who starts off by calling me a snowflake and a libtard. That's not a conversation that's going to go anywhere.
But you are. Sorry.
We're devolving. No.
If I get called a social justice warrior one more time, it's not a good argument.
Mother.
I mean, okay, yeah, mom, okay, yeah, whatever. But actually, when I'm at school and people hear me speak, they're like, "You're such a social justice warrior." Why is it bad that I care about social equality? Why is this the times that we're living in?
Yeah.
Can I answer from that side?
Sorry, what?
Can I answer that question from that side?
Yeah.
Maybe get some rational thought. Because I might as well. I actually voted for Trump. I know it's probably going to get me kicked off the the broadcasting thing now.
No, you are most certainly entire. Of course.
The reason why I see it, and I'm not saying it's right that she's being called that, is because the way that it's really, and this is going to sound so history teacher saying in the middle, but it's really the media, when not just like the news organizations, but social media that portrays it's all or nothing. It's never in the middle, kind of like what I think Phil was alluding to earlier. It's never like, in the middle. It's always left or right or that. And when it comes down to it, like, no, you're not probably being a social justice warrior in the terms like they're thinking of, but they just see it as a bad thing because of people that are saying, these ridiculous things just because they want to be politically correct. Just like someone will say like, oh, you're a fascist just because you want to spend less money on this and more money on that. And that might affect, someone's well-being. It's kind of like that. That's what it comes down to. It's like the extremes of it, which leads people down the way to say, oh, well, I'm always for Trump, or I'm never Trump, or I'm always for Hillary. Like, I'm with her. It's just extreme as the media, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There, you have to almost, right now what everybody's doing is they're just trying to lump you somewhere. And you're like, you're a little bit this, so we're going to push you all the way to the left. And you're a little bit that, we're going to push you all the way to the right. You're alt-right, you're, a social justice warrior, whatever you are. And instead of giving people that opinion to kind of, like you said, Drew, like playing the devil's advocate, it's like, I think what's good about being centrist, left of center, right of center, you can be a little bit more empathetic to both sides. You can hear the other side. You can sit down and have a rational conversation. And, with going the other way, as the media has brought it out or whatever, it's made it really difficult for us to sit down and just hear what we have to say. We have a couple of friends in our close circle that, are Trump supporters, or they're, Bernie or Hillary supporters. And it's really, really hard sometimes, as, a person like myself to sit down and listen, but I do. And I think that regardless, we all have to kind of make a conscious effort, whether you want to hear it or not, you got to hear it, because there might be something in there that just makes enough sense so you can empathize with that person and you can see, okay, I get it. The military, why do some of the military people not like Muslims? Well, I get it. They've been in, in combat zones where they've seen these, bombs go off and all these types of things. Can you empathize with that? Sure. Does it mean it justifies it? Does it mean it's right? Not necessarily, but the fact is that if we can all get together a little bit more and try to get on the same plane so that we can have more bipartisanship, and we just don't have that right now. Brett?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and first of all, I think Carrie just elegantly described what I would like to do with these panel discussions on statecraft, is bring people together like this, because we've had a very fruitful conversation here, lots of wonderful ideas. My mind is at like 10% right now. Like, I'm running out, and the fact that I did not think that we were going to have such an insightful and poignant conversation about all these issues an hour ago. I'm just focusing on the Cliff Bar in the corner, and it's great that we're having this, and I want to have more of these discussions, preferably when I'm fully awake, because what I would love to do with this show is with these panel discussions, because I'm going to mix them with some satirical pieces, and I'm going to mix them with some investigative journalism that's going to be coming out later tonight on the feed. I would love to have discussions like this where we sit down and we talk about education. We talk about where do blue collar workers go. We talk about standardized tests and what's good about them, what's bad, and how do we progress them in a reasonable way that that benefits students, that benefits people from all shades and all economic backgrounds. Because there isn't a lot of that. You're right, Carrie. There's not a lot of that, and it's distraughting because in some ways is not as divisive as some people think. There are a lot of ideas that he has that are more middle of the road, that are aligned more with what Republicans tend to get in the ballpark of. He just tends to yell them on Twitter, which tends to get him in a little bit of trouble. But my point is that he's not entirely as radical as some people think he is, and he's, to be entirely fair, he's probably not going to get a lot of his some more radical ideas done. He's going to have to work with a more moderate, traditional conservative Congress. And I want to talk about all that as we continue in the future here with Statecraft. One thing I want to do here is open up the table here at the very end of the show. If there's anything that anyone would like to briefly mention before we close up the show.
Sure, I'll take it away. There was one thing you had brought up in a previous podcast earlier today about what was happening with the Twitter account. And it looks like what has happened now is President Obama has gone to an archive version of POTUS 44, and President Trump has taken over the @POTUS symbol. So, of course, I had to refollow. So it almost looks like maybe they changed POTUS's name. You know how you can just change the name? Like he probably POTUS 44, and they created a new @POTUS. So almost an easier
So
solution.
everybody make sure to give the new @POTUS a follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? And I will say this too. And you were talking about that. A lot of people don't follow Trump and they don't follow Hillary, and I suggest that you do. Follow both sides, get both sides of the answers, because there's so much information out there that you can become your own investigative journalist and you can find out the answers yourself. We have a huge thing called this internet. We can dive into stuff and get archives, and we can be our own journalists and we can come up with our own conclusions. So don't be afraid to follow the other side just because you might not agree. I've done it from here on out, so nobody knows, which way I follow. I'm left, but I follow both sides because I do want the full picture, and I want to be able to give that full picture to my kid, and have a good conversation. So that's it.
Absolutely. In fact, one thing I'm going to be doing for this show, and it'll just be a deviation of my current follow list, is if people are having trouble discerning who they should follow and who they shouldn't, I'm going to go ahead and put together a big list. About 400 people on it, a good deal of which I'm already following, that are from every shade, that are Republicans, that are Democrats, that are reporters for different agencies, that are international reporters for nonprofits and all sorts of stuff like that. And I think it's a great resource to go ahead and follow. And Carrie just reminded me that that's on my to-do list for this show, is to essentially create a Twitter resource for people, big giant lists that you can follow and get news from all sides, because I think that's so immensely important. If you're going to follow Bill, if you're going to follow HuffPo, follow Drudge, keep that, I'm not sure if that comparison is totally apt, but you get what I'm saying. Follow both sides. That's very important. And before we close out, is anything else anyone else wants to drop very quickly? How long was your quiz, Carrie?
Oh, it was about 15 questions. It's going to take a little while to get through, so maybe we can hit that up tomorrow. Maybe I'll just pose the questions to you, but it's going to take a little bit.
Okay, we'll either do it tomorrow or we'll do it next week on another show.
Sure.
Because we had such a great conversation. I'm so happy at it, and we'll continue that, of course, later on. I do want to thank all of you, though. Any parting words from anybody here?
Yeah, I got one real quick. Just so I kind of go on what you said. Give everything a chance. Give not just even the president, give each other a chance. That sounds like a teacher thing to say. I'm about to get drunk on a weekend.
Holding hands.
No, I'm gonna be drinking shitty whiskey and shooting my rifle off somewhere. But no, I'm just kidding. We get so stuck in this 140 character world where there's no nuance or really critical thinking that's where you get wrapped up in the left and right thing. And can we all just get along, people? And can people stop? I'm going to borrow this from a very funny comic in the area. Can kids my age stop putting flowers in front of unarmed police and saying, like, they're going to want to be some sort of iconic picture? I'm going to borrow that from him. Can we stop going back to it? Like, my generation just stinks with that. Like, they're all trying to be like social media all-stars. But yeah, I'm glad Trump won. I'm sorry people are upset about it, but it'll be okay. Like, just like Obama, when he won, everyone said the world was ending and he's going to hand out, everyone's money. It's going to be all right, I think.
It is going to be all right. And I'm so happy that you had that viewpoint here, because I will never, ever kick anyone off the show for voting for anyone, unless maybe it's like a David Duke vote or something like that. If you come on my show, either like in a Klansman outfit or on the opposite side, what would be the dramatic opposite side of that on the left?
Extremely, I don't even know, an extremely violent anti-white Black Lives Matter protester, I guess. But then again, that's lumping him in like 140 characters, so you can't really do that.
How about like a really accurate Joseph Stalin costume? There you go. really far
both
left.
Oh no, you liberals would love that, right? I'm just kidding. See, now I'm being facetious.
those are the two
being a
things
dick.
It's the weekend.
those
I'm
Now
are
you're
off.
two
just
things
being
I would
from
probably not
Philly.
entertain. So, but outside of that, I want everyone's conversations and I want everyone's opinions. And you know what? Drew is right. It is going to be okay. Even if you don't agree with Trump, he is the president now. And if you can't respect the man, respect the office. And hopefully he will as well. And even if you don't agree with him, hopefully some good things are going to come out of it, and some not so good things if you disagree with them. And the pendulum swings. He might be around 4 years. He might be around 8. Statistically, it's very unlikely that the Republicans hold it for more than 8. So pendulum swings. I want to thank everyone for being here on this first panel of this show. Essentially, I'm surprised I was able to get on you guys with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi from my phone. I'm on a hotspot right now. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off here. If you want to find Statecraft, you can find it on Facebook.com/StatecraftPod. You can also find it on Twitter @StatecraftPod. Go ahead and tweet me if you have any questions at Rivers Rubin. We're going to put that in the show notes as well. And of course, if you want to find any of these wonderful people, they're all in Blazing Caribou in different capacities. I want to thank David Luzader, who was recently departed from our show, but he was wonderful. I want to thank Carrie Sims. I want to thank Drew as well, and Phil and Reagan. Thank you so much for joining me, all of you. I really appreciate it. And that's going to do it.